2, 1. What's up, Jess?
What's up, man?
It's good to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me, brother.
This is cool, man. If you're just welcoming, or if you're just listening to us, welcome to the God is Awesome podcast. I'm your host. My name is Aaron, and what we do here is we go through people's testimonies, and we just ask them how God has been in their life and what amazing things has He done in their life. And this is like a holy time, you know what I'm saying? Like Moses had to take off his sandals when he was walking on holy ground because God was there. And I feel like when we listen to people's testimonies, God has been in these places in people's lives. And, it's something awesome and holy to listen to. We want to give a quick shout out to everyone who's joining us on Facebook Live today. And if you listen to this podcast and it's something that's, you find valuable that maybe someone else can resonate with, please don't hesitate to share it with someone. Yep. I'm sure, Jess, you won't hesitate to share away. Talking to people and stuff about it.
Absolutely.
A lot of people get self-conscious, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I can't be a Christian. People can't accept me, all this kind of stuff. And really, we have a whole community of people saying, look, God accepted me at my worst. I was like a terrible person, and like, I'm not alone. Like, we're all like sinners saved by grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Anyway, Jess, we're going to kick it over to you. Thanks for being here. Super glad that you're here with us, or with me and all of us here. Give us some origin story, some background story. Who were you growing up? What was your home life like growing up before you met Christ?
So born and raised South Florida, 40 years ago. Originally Miami, typical Florida upbringing, beach, Disney, school,
Gators,
Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Miami Dolphins all the way. Hurricanes all the way. Pretty good. Unfortunately, my parents got divorced when I was about 10 years old. Mm-hmm. That was rough.
How'd that go for you? Why'd they get divorced?
I won't get into why they got divorced.
Okay.
Just because that's their business. But it was real tough on me. My dad wasn't quite treat my mom the way she deserved to be treated, unfortunately. And that led to a lot of back and forth with them. They kind of fought, for custody, me and my brother, back and forth. We bounced around summers with dad, school year with mom. Moved around a lot of different cities, state of Florida, but all over. I think a dozen different cities.
This is your teenage years here?
This is up until 13, 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
Things got a lot more stable, thankfully, when my mom remarried to my stepdad, Soren, Kelsey and Matt's dad. And that was probably some of the best growing up with them.
So you grew up in a blended home?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. My dad even remarried eventually too.
Gotcha.
So
what's it like growing up in blended divorced homes, like bouncing back and forth? Is there like pivoting for
It's at times it's cool because, your family grows. Like from the get-go, the day my mom and stepdad got married, we were part of the family. Like when my mom started dating my stepdad, he knew that it was a package deal.
Oh.
Mom had 2 kids.
That's cool.
And I remember, my mom taking us out on dates. We go out, all 4 of us go out to dinner. From the very first time I met Soren. On times like that, it's cool. It's nice.
You liked it. You weren't the type to rebel against.
No, I actually embraced that.
Okay.
Soren, to this day, has been an amazing person, amazing dad. When it came times to when you're younger, especially holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and you kind of have to choose who to see.
Sure.
When you're 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, that's kind of tough, you know. Sometimes it kind of worked out where you saw one on Thanksgiving, one on Christmas, but then it's still not the single family you'd want to enjoy a holiday with.
Sure.
You're still bouncing around. And then over the years, it didn't get a whole lot easier. We lived with my mom for a while up until about the time Kelsey was born. And then my dad kind of guilted us into go living with him. And then that didn't work out for me.
What do you mean guilted?
So he straight up said, hey, you know, he was living in Homestead. He was moving to Fort Myers. There were going to be some long distance between us on different coasts of Florida. And he kind of said, if you want to spend time with me. And at that time, I idolized my dad. I mean, my dad's you know, any young boy idolizes their dad.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I can't stand not seeing you, Dad. We have to go live with you now. And that's really not the way it should have been handled. Looking back now, the kid should never have to choose which parent to live with or follow or love or appreciate.
That's an impossible choice.
Unfortunately, we had to make it.
You're 13 years old.
That was 14, I do believe, 15.
Who forced the choice?
My dad kind of did.
Okay.
He kind of pushed a little bit. So I want to say that was, and the worst part was things were going good. You know, we had little brother Matt. Kelsey was coming along. This was trying to gauge by what grade I was in. I had gone to the same middle school and just started 2 years in the high school. So actually a little bit older, probably about 16 years old.
Gotcha.
And then to uproot and move across the state. Because again, at that time, I'm an early teenager. My dad's my dad, man. He's, you know, he's the man,
Totally
even if he's not the man, he's the man.
Totally get it.
And
so you had to choose, and you chose your dad.
Chose my dad.
Which, by the way, don't mean to like make it about anything else, but like just so anyone else knows, our relationship here is like Jess is my brother, like my stepbrother, right? Like
guaranteed.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
His half sister is Kelsey, which is my wife. So just for anyone who wants to know out there.
For real.
Anyway, so you're in your teenage years now.
Yes.
15, 16.
Yes.
Where does this take you? Wait, let me ask you something. How did that shape you? Like, how did you grow from that experience or this continuing experience of split home?
It was still tough. At that same time, I was always doing well in school. So I was still excelling in school. I was actually my senior year of high school. I was working 2 jobs and going to college. Mm-hmm. I was attending a church over in Fort Myers for same one for a few years. So I was still kind of I was still rooted in Christ.
Yeah, was faith.
Absolutely. I mean, we went to church 3-4 times a week.
Both your mom and your dad?
I didn't see my mom. When I was with my mom, she made sure that I saw my dad equally enough.
Okay.
When I lived with my dad, I didn't get to see my mom quite as much as I should have or could have or really I should have.
Gotcha.
But at least I was still going to church.
Okay.
Very deeply rooted in church, which I was very thankful for. Kept me out of a lot of trouble. Between that and 2 jobs and going to college, I was still a good boy.
Were you saved? Did you have a relationship with Christ?
A few years prior, I had known, became saved. Mm-hmm. And I believed that the whole time. You know, I was a firm believer in Christ. Very, Bible every day, church 3-4 times a week. I went to youth church, regular church, any chance I had a chance to go to church, any functions at all, I was very, very involved.
Gotcha.
So I was working 2 jobs and going to college. So it's kind of tough, but I made it work whenever I could.
Gotcha.
So, life's still good.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, about 17 years old, I had a falling out with my stepmother.
Okay.
And I got kicked out of the house.
All right.
Because
what happened?
This is how funny. This is how sad it was. I had gotten in trouble for staying out late at a church function. That's how strict of a household I lived in. Yes, true story.
What kind of church? Like a lock-in or something?
Like a lock-in, yeah.
Those lock-ins are bad deals.
Yeah. I got in trouble for that. Like full-blown, we had house phones back in the day, landlines. So my stepmom called the church demanding I come home because I was out late. Yeah. So that's how bad it was. And that was kind of like the epitome of
bad things happen at lock-in.
Yeah. The Disney stories of evil stepmother, that those are true in my life.
Wow. So is it like a strict like rules?
Very, very strict.
No reason rules.
Like in bed by 9. I could, if I was working a job, I could work till 2 or 3 in the morning. When I wasn't working, I'd be in bed by 9. They had to know where I was going.
Weren't you grown at this time?
I was, not only was I grown, like I said, 2 jobs, going to college. I was paying rent and I paid for my own car.
You had to be in bed by 9 o'clock.
Yeah, like curfew at like 9 o'clock.
Like a child?
Yeah, like a child.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
so you had this falling out.
So very strict falling out. 17 years old. Thankfully, my mom, my stepdad took me in, and that brought me back to Port St. Lucie, 97.
Okay.
So very, actually, very, very blessed that they kind of, open arms. You know what I mean? Like I literally walked away and went to Fort Myers to follow my dad, and obviously didn't work out for obvious reasons, and they let me come home.
How'd that feel?
It felt good. The falling out with my dad, my stepmom, was bad enough. Like they didn't even come to my high school graduation. Yeah, it was pretty ugly for a little while.
That hurts.
It did.
Especially when you come from a place where you idolize them.
Yes. Yeah. So, but thankfully, like I said, I moved to my mom, my stepdad, and of course, Aaron, Matt, and Kelsey, and that's yeah, it was pretty tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how'd that shape you?
It made it hurt a lot too, because on top of all that, my brother Sean, my mom and my dad have a brother. I've got a full blown brother, Sean. And then I've got Aaron, Matt, and Kelsey are technically half brother and sister, but we never use the word half there. They're my family. Yeah. But I had a brother, Sean, that unfortunately at the same time, my dad and my stepmom doing whatever they're doing, they ended up moving over to Texas. So at the same time, I had lost relationship with my dad, really didn't have with my stepmom, and I lost relationship with my brother as well.
So really strained relationship.
Yeah.
On that side. Okay.
Yeah. But I kept chugging along. Came over here to, it was a couple years in Boynton Beach. I continued to go to school. Then we moved to Port St. Lucie about 97. I continued to go to school. Got an engineering degree. So kept chugging along.
Smarty pants.
Kept chugging along. And that's what brought me to Port St. Lucie ever since. Been here ever since.
So you saved, you've got an estranged relationship with your family on that side. But you've been shown, I understand, grace.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, welcome back, open arms. You have nothing bad to say about that. So you're going into, you have your degree now.
Yes.
What happens next?
I get my degree, and it's a degree in electronic engineering. And I, best I could find in the field, I started working in retail. 20-something years of retail. I worked at Circuit City for the first 7 years of that. Got my own place, and I was still in the church. I was still behaving for the most part. At that time, we were going to Morningside. Okay. And life was still going pretty good. I got my own place eventually.
So what happened? Where did it go south?
It went south. It was still going good for a while. Where things started getting south, you got to kind of jump forward 10, 15 years. Worked at Circuit City. I got laid off from Circuit City. Okay. Making pretty good money. I still bounced back from that, thankfully, grace of God. Got another job almost immediately. I was able to continue working. I was able to build my house. Life's still going good. Mm-hmm. Chugging along, making it work. And probably late 2000s, started partying a little too much.
What does that look like?
So a whole lot of going out every week. A whole lot of clubs. A whole lot of times where.
What's a lot? What's that number?
A lot?
Like a week.
Probably 3 or 4 times a week.
3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Over half. Most of the times, over half of the week.
Yeah.
You're out all night.
Yeah.
What's partying? Drinking. Drugs?
Not too much. No.
Not too much. Just a little drugs.
A little bit. A little bit.
Like marijuana. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything more?
No.
Okay.
Never nothing more than that.
And so you were just trying to have a good time?
Yeah.
What's
so
the reason?
At this time, I had worked. Anybody who's ever worked retail, and I was a retail manager. Everybody knows this. It's not an easy gig. Uh-huh. It's a pretty tough gig. So along this time, you'd work 50, 60 hours a week, and you blow off your steam a couple days a week. And
you said 4.
Yeah, couple, 3, 4, 5. But I kept kind of chugging along. And around this time, this is where I kind of, especially when you work the job I was working, your days off are Tuesday and Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So you not only do you not physically have the schedule to get to church on Sunday, when you're out working as many hours as you're working, and then you're out and kind of partying as much as you're partying, you kind of, it's very easy not to fall in line to be where you're supposed to be.
Gotcha. I heard this quote from C.S. Lewis, like it's always a gradual slip away. How people slip away from the church.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like for you.
So like, and I had gone like when I could, Easter Sunday, these occasional days, but I wasn't reading the Bible. Mm-hmm. I wasn't kind of getting in the Word. I really wasn't even praying, really.
That's really. I mean, like to have like your faith eat up the rest of your.
Because you got to think, especially when you're working as much as you are, and then you have adult things to deal with, sure. And then you're partying on the times when you can,
because you're too stressed,
and then you're sleeping in, and the stress and the anger. And this was, about 2004, 2005.
How old were you?
Was that? How many years ago was that? 14 years ago?
Yeah.
36, early 30s.
Okay.
Early 30s.
So you're late 20s, early 30s, you're partying.
I'm partying a lot. Yeah, I'm making up for, living that strict household when you're younger.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, I didn't have a wild teenage years.
Yeah.
I definitely waited till I was mid-20s,
so
early 30s.
That makes a lot of sense. You're a good boy.
Yeah. And then as soon as I got a chance to let loose, kind of let loose. And I was very angry.
Why?
I don't know. I wasn't happy.
With what?
Everything.
Job.
I worked a very stressful job.
Life.
Family.
How about where you were in life?
Yeah. It was.
Were you comparing yourself with someone?
I would say comparing myself to someone, but especially when you're making that kind of money, because you do make pretty good money, you work a lot of hours, sure. But you make pretty good money. You always want more. It's keeping up with the Joneses. I also came up in working on cars and trucks and that kind of thing too. And you always want to have more toys, and you always want to have more vacations, and that involved working harder and working more.
So when you say keeping up with the Joneses, do you mean like you always tried to put up an image of yourself?
Yeah, of course you have to. I mean, at least in the world I was in, it was easy to. I was at the gym 3-4 times a week as well, trying to offset all my partying and being an idiot on the other days. Sure. I was lonely. I definitely didn't date the right women then.
What does that mean? The right women?
I tell you, I dated women so crazy, I had to have a restraining order against them.
Oh no.
Okay. Like that's,
oh no.
Like I was not living the life I should.
Okay. And did you know better, or did you just not think about it?
I'm sure I knew better, but if you're making money, you're paying the bills. I had never gotten in trouble. Mm-hmm. There are some nights I partied that I don't remember the nights that I partied.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
But thankfully, through good enough friends, some that might be on the chat watching right now, people got me home safe.
Yeah.
Was
it true that I heard the story? Was it true that you went from a strip club to church in the same night?
I will not state that for the facts.
Is that true?
But I could have potentially been that bad of a boy back then.
Man. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But thankfully, not looking back now, I was very blessed with friends that kept me out of trouble.
Okay.
I almost got a DUI one night even.
Yeah.
And I had a cop friend get me out of trouble. I'm sure there's plenty of nights that
good people around you. You knew good
yes,
people.
Yes. Looking back, I was very, very blessed to have that. Didn't see it at the time. You do that. You let that kind of stress out. You party, and you're like, oof, dodged one there.
Yeah. And
looking back, you're like, wow, I was really, even God was really looking out for me then, because any one of those times I used to race cars on the highway going down south. I've been on 95 going to buck 25 before.
Sure.
I could have easily had to blow out a tire and crash somewhere. I could have got DUI.
Looking back on it, you saying that God protected you.
Absolutely.
From a lot of things.
100%. Absolutely did.
Yeah. So let's why do you think people party like that then? Why did you party like that? I know you said you were angry.
Trying to escape reality, I think. Looking back now, it's a coping mechanism, whether it be depression, stress, anxiety. It's a coping mechanism. The daily grind of working every day,
sure, of
trying to pay the bills and take care of the house and do this and do that.
You wanted to feel something else besides stress.
You have to. I mean, unfortunately, that was my only coping mechanism back then.
Gotcha. So how did it all change?
So this wasn't until about 2009, 2010. True story. 2004, when I first met my wife, we worked together at Best Buy. And true story, she absolutely disliked me a lot back then because I wasn't a really nice and happy person. I was very cocky at work. We go back to the stressed out, angry. True story. We did not get along at first.
Okay.
But over the years, despite all my partying and ex-girlfriends at restraining orders, we built a friendship over the years. And we had a couple close calls where we almost dated, but nothing ever really facilitated itself into a relationship.
Gotcha.
But there were times where she was my best friend, whether she knew it or not, because she was the type of person I could just have a conversation with about things. I have vented to her about girlfriends. She had talked to me about things. She came to Florida. She was married originally. And then, she had relationships. I had relationships with people.
You guys were good friends.
Throughout the years, yeah, we're doing good. And then I had just started to kind of see the error of my ways overall. I had, looking back, I saw how stressful life was and how much I've been partying and how I needed to kind of turn that down a little bit and get a little better at things. And I'll never forget, it was August 2010. I was at lunch for my job, sitting up by the causeway, and I was kind of reflecting. I had just got a bad relationship. I was kind of reflecting on all the crap I had gone through. And it kind of popped in my head that, my wife had been there this whole time, So she was actually on vacation at the time, and she came back from vacation a couple days later, and I sat down with her in the office and I made a list of all the reasons why we should not date. It would ruin our friendship, and it can get awkward at work if it didn't work out, and so many other lists of things. I said, despite this list, I think we should give it a shot.
Yeah.
And
it's romantic.
I guess it was. And that was August 2010. And then we had started dating, and I'll never forget our first couple conversations. Now keep in mind, we worked together 50 something hours a week, right? Sure. So it's plenty of time to conversate when you're not busy dealing with things. And the first couple of nights after this, we were on the phone for 3 or 4 hours like teenage kids, chit-chatting about things. And this was around this time also, I was kind of I still couldn't go to church on every Sunday because of my schedule of work, but I was trying to kind of get back into it.
So was she a Christian?
She grew up in a Church of Christ, but she was not a Christian.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, she became saved while we were married.
Okay. So how'd you guys get married?
So this was August 2010. We started dating. Because we had known each other so well, I knew I wanted to marry her within a few months. Aww. Legitimately. So on February, it was actually Super Bowl Sunday.
Romantic.
2011. It wasn't the day of the Super Bowl. The afternoon. It was early hours of the morning. Okay. We had gone to dinner with some friends, and we went out to the same causeway. Okay. That I had my epiphany that I need to date this woman. And we're sitting at the benches against the water. Bob Marley's playing in the background. And I had taken out my only inheritance I got from my dad. The only thing I ever gotten was the wedding ring that my stepmother wore. Wow. And I said, I had it sized and plated and everything ready. I said, I want to marry you, right? She's like, yeah. I was like, I really want you to be my wife. And I pulled the ring out and asked her right then and there. And that was February 2011. And we got married November 2011.
Oh,
so
man.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned in your biography here that your God used your wife to bring you back here.
Yeah. So after we got married November. At the same time, I had gotten out of retail, and I had gotten a job where I'm at now, where I had actually Sundays off where I can go to church. So we started going to the church that I go to now.
So it's the job, elimination
of job, eliminated stress, because I knew I could not have that kind of job and raise a family. Okay. This just wasn't going to happen. So right before I got married, I was able to leave the job and get a job where I can go to church. And we had gone to First PSL, which we just voted yesterday to be Family Church of Port St. Lucie. Mm-hmm. But we had started going to church there. And that's where not only had she had a chance to come to know Christ, and she got baptized there. Both her kids have been able to get blessed there as well. So me kind of like understanding I need to kind of get back into church, and thankfully very blessed that she came along with it. There was no real resistance to it. Yeah. We didn't have to go out and try multiple churches. I just said, this is a church I was kind of going to at the time. Let's continue to go there.
She was interested. She's supportive.
And very blessed that she kind of just came along. And not only that, but she herself came to know Christ.
That's awesome.
And got baptized as well. Awesome. So she saved me from years of partying and stupid things and stupid decisions. And sure. After all that, she showed me grace. And when I told her tons of reasons why she shouldn't, and yet she still dated me, that grew into a marriage, and had a chance to actually go to church as well, where she gets saved as well.
You have two beautiful boys.
Two boys. Absolutely. Tucker, it just turned 7. We celebrated that yesterday, the party yesterday. Mm-hmm. And Bryce will be 5 on the 4th of July.
And you said how God walked with you through these births. What was so particularly troubling that you needed God's presence in these births?
So
we always need God's presence.
Yeah, absolutely, always do. My wife is a soldier, and she worked all the way up to the day that Bryce was born. Tucker was born.
Oh my gosh.
Tucker was born.
She's a workhorse.
As a manager in retail. Mm-hmm.
Big belly.
Big belly, working hard, on her
Best
feet
Buy.
All day.
Gotcha.
Coming home, feet swollen, hurting,
Buy
dealing
this
with
camera.
jerk customers, getting yelled at.
Yes, sir. Rebate.
Working Thanksgiving, all the hours.
Gotcha. Swole foot.
So she worked the entire time, mm-hmm. up until the day he was born, and he came. So his birth was probably the scariest moment of my life. So again, her being a soldier, I remember we went to the hospital early hours in the morning, and she had labored naturally for like 14 hours, 17 hours. I think it's 14, 15 hours. She'll tell you the exact time, because I'm always wrong. But she had labored for hours, no epidural, just breathing.
No epidural.
Soldiering away, man. She was doing amazing. And then come 7 o'clock at night, a doctor by the name of Dr. Meredith came in, and she noticed something funky with Tucker's heartbeat. And after an exam, she found out that he was choking his umbilical cord. So it was literally he was pressing against the cervix, kind of choking himself. And I'll never forget, our Meredith's best friend Desiree was there with me, and it was like a scene from a movie. And I almost like broke down because I couldn't quite understand what was going on. The next thing I remember, the doctor hops on top of the gurney, like in a movie, holding the baby's head back, Tucker's head back, and they wheel her off for an emergency C-section. Like holding the baby back, hops on the gurney,
pushes his,
keep the head off the umbilical cord, hops on the gurney. Now, again, Meredith had been soldiering for so many hours.
She's on the gurney. He's on top of her on the gurney.
She's on top pushing the head back, and then they reel her back for an emergency C-section.
Oh, jeez.
And I am like numb at this point.
Yeah.
I immediately beg God, please let them come out of this okay. Desiree is rubbing my back, telling me to calm down. It's like she literally had to like grab me by the face and say, "It's gonna be okay."
Everything was probably in a panic.
Yeah. And the doctor was amazing. Mm-hmm. Tucker was born 13 minutes later.
Oh man.
And
what happened? They just C-sectioned.
Emergency C-section, got him out. Unfortunately for Meredith, she didn't get to hold him for the first 12 hours because she had no epidural, so she was in complete pain.
Yeah.
So I had my wife, who I love dearly, is in a bed, pain, and apparently there was so many births that night. I had very little help from the nurses. They literally hand me a baby, bottles and diapers, and say, "Good luck."
Oh no!
And as any typical husband, I didn't read any of the books.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, if your wife gives you a book to read, you should read it. Meredith will tell you I didn't read the books.
Not Spark Notes.
And I should have read the books. Okay. Definitely would have been easier. Okay, I didn't read them. My fault. I'm sorry, babe. And literally they handed it to me. They cleaned him up. Thankfully, he was healthy.
That's great.
He was a couple weeks early, but he was healthy. Beautiful baby boy. And so the first 12 hours of his life, it was just him and dad.
So God saved him from
100%.
Something
and 100%. And Meredith, of course, in the hospital, she was a lot of pain getting up because she got cut open epidural.
Sure.
But she absolutely soldiered through it. And it's tough, man. It's tough.
How about the second one?
Second one was also not easy. Meredith was not working at that time, thank God. But Bryce was 6 weeks early.
6 weeks early.
6 weeks early. She had been going back and forth with the doctors that, we had gone to the hospital like early in the evening because she kind of felt contractions like he was coming. And the doc said, no, baby's not coming, and sent us home. And a few hours later, her water broke.
Oh, geez.
So we went back.
Yeah.
And this was 6 weeks early. Thankfully, she'll be able to get an epidural this time.
Yeah.
But that was very, very tough because he ultimately had to be in a NICU for 12 days.
Wow.
And kind of the same thing, not quite as scary and traumatic as Tucker because a little more planned. Your second kid, first kid, second kid. But the idea of our baby coming early, and when you see the pictures, he was NICU for 12 days. He at times was completely wrapped in blankets because of jaundice. He had a tube in his nose to eat.
Oh man.
He had blown out so many IVs. He had an IV in the top of his head at one time.
Jeez.
Because he'd blown him out on his feet. And Meredith, being a soldier, she would only leave his side to go home and take a shower. So we'd take shifts. Thankfully, Mom came over to be with Tucker, and we took shifts. And when I wasn't there, she was there, and when she wasn't there, I was there. How
long was it? How long was this process?
12 days.
Wow.
I even attempted to work. I took my normal week off, and I went to work for one day. And the thought of my wife up there all day with my kid not being home, I think I did 2 jobs that day in the field. And I called my boss and said, dude, I can't work. I need some more vacation time or something. So
that's scary.
It was, especially he was born 6 pounds, 3 ounces. So he was kind of a big kid. for being 6 weeks early, but he dropped down to 5 pounds, 8 ounces.
Oh, no.
And his lungs weren't developed, and he had jaundice real bad. So just the idea of, seeing him where he was, it was tough. And it was tough on Meredith,
So he's healthy.
He's healthy now. We did have a scare, unfortunately. So the guy got us through that, thankfully. And then about 4 months later, he was in a hospital for a week with Kawasaki disease. And
what's that?
So that is, it's an autoimmune disease. And thankfully, Meredith was able to fight to get him treatment. So he had a full body rash. He had fevers upwards of 104 degrees, bloodshot eyes. Some kids can get raspberry tongue, strawberry tongue. She had been fighting with the doctors, going back and forth, multiple doctor visits, because at first one doctor tried to say he had a eye infection because he had a clogged tear duct. And then at times they said, oh, it's just an autoimmune disease going around. And then, the fever is normal. He also stopped eating. Like he'd gone from, he was, Meredith was pumping to feed him, and he'd gone from 3 or 4 bottles a day down to 1.
Yeah. Lost
a lot of weight. And she had gone to the doctor a couple of times. They dismissed it as normal diseases with normal sickness, eye issues or fever, or cold, or flu. And then finally she said, look, I'm not taking no for an answer, and took him to the ER in tradition. And this is where I truly believe divine intervention. So tradition ER doesn't really have a pediatric ER.
Okay.
So Meredith happened to go in. There happened to be a nurse on loan from Stewart that was a peds nurse.
Oh, wow.
And she saw Meredith and she saw Bryce, and she said, this is Kawasaki disease. And she actually had fought with a doctor because the doctor didn't want to admit him to the hospital for Kawasaki's.
Wow.
And
so if that nurse wasn't there,
Bryce may not have been here, because this was day 6 or 7. And by 10 days, if they don't get a cure, if they don't get treated, it may not, they may not make it. And thankfully for Meredith fighting and that nurse being there, the nurse actually called Lawnwood and had him admitted. And on top of all that, our doctor at the time, a pediatric doctor at the time, he was the one that was on call. His very first call was a kid who had Kawasaki disease. Because what happens is it's usually 6 months to 6 years, and Bryce was a little young for it. But they admitted him, thankfully. And I'll never forget the image of Meredith hopping in the ambulance for Bryce. And again, same thing. Just like when Bryce was born in the hospital, begged and pleaded God, please be with them. And
so let me ask you something. These 2 births, your
yes.
2 sons, both very difficult.
Yes.
Very scary.
Yes.
In their own rights. Right. Tucker's very, very quick. You see like this doctor hopping on, pushing him back into
absolutely.
And then you see your son and your wife struggling and surviving.
Yes.
What's the takeaway from that with God? Like where did that leave you with? How did this shape you from in relation to like your relationship?
At the time, begging and pleading, and when you come on the other side,
right?
It's a perfect example of forgiveness, of grace.
How do you mean?
I didn't deserve it. I didn't always follow the textbook Christian the way you should be.
Sure.
I had not lived the way I should have lived.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't deserve his grace. I didn't deserve, at the time, I didn't feel like I deserved what he gave me. So on the other side, it became a great appreciation that through all that struggle, I come out on the other side with a beautiful wife and 2 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And that's like, the example that his grace, his forgiveness, his second chances in life is you could fall from him. And I know friends that have fallen way worse than I have. I'm talking bottom of the barrel. I'm saying I'm somewhere in the middle, maybe toward the top. I've had some friends that have, bottomed out the worst. And any of us, good, bad, or ugly, as far as we fall from God, it's simply a matter of getting back with him and just legitimately praying and begging, and you will get a second chance.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't always have to have, I'm obligated to even have the second chance because, there have been some stupid mistakes I made over the years that, one little wrong turn and I may not have been here.
Yeah.
But even after all that, I'll still give him a second chance. I was still blessed to have what I have.
None of us are worthy or deserve these second chances.
Yes.
God always just gives
absolutely
us anyway.
100%.
So you we're running down on the list here, but I want to talk about this recent health scare.
Yeah. So back around Thanksgiving
of last year.
So I've had sleep apnea for 20 years, which is amazing. The fact that Meredith even agreed to marry me because my snoring is absolutely horrendous.
Like a grizzly bear.
Like it's gnarly. Okay. It's gnarly. And that was really sleep apnea. She would hear me at night, like literally stop breathing 10, 12 times a night. Mm-hmm. And so, but I never had it treated. I never went to the doctor. I never took care of it. So men, if you have a problem, go to the doctor. I hate doctors, but you need to go. I never treated it. I had never gone. Mm-hmm. And so back in November, I woke up in the middle of the night and it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. I'd not wanted to bother Meredith because I was freaking out because around the same time, I had a guy at work who was 42 and I'm 40. He had died of a massive heart attack. So that's my first thought. I got an elephant on my chest. I'm having a heart attack. I take 2 aspirin immediately. And to not freak her out, I kind of try to deal with myself. Maybe it's something else. Maybe I don't know what it is. To take a hot shower, I go for a walk around the house, and it's just not going away. I just feel like
pressure.
I just can't breathe.
Yeah.
So I wake Meredith up, and I said, "Babe, I'm having a real hard time right now." And she's, out of it and takes a second. And then finally I had a blurt, I think I'm having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And we hashed it out for a few minutes. She's like, okay, let's see what happens. Let's go. In 15 minutes, we'll go to the ER. 5 minutes later, I said, nope, can't do it. We got to go. Mm-hmm. By the time we got to the ER, I had gotten there with 209 over 126 blood pressure.
Wow.
And, I got admitted for a couple of days. They did all the tests and all the scans. I ended up getting a catheter done. 2 days in the hospital. I got transported in ambulance to Longwood to get the cath done. My wife stood by me the whole side. Thank God. She would not leave me. Thankfully, very, very, very blessed that we had friends that we call family.
Sure.
Take our kids in.
Yeah.
Thank you, the Koreas and the Pattersons. They took our kids for a couple nights while we deal with what I'm dealing with. Another ER stint later because had not gotten down to the problem.
Right. And it's never solved in the first time.
It was never, it was never solved the first time. Wasn't solved the second ER trip. Then it wasn't. I got some meds. I got things kind of under control, and a bunch of more visits to the doctor. I finally realized that it's sleep apnea. Lots of internet research, WebMD kind of stuff, and talking to multiple doctors and multiple visits and freaking out. And thankfully, I was able to take some time off of work. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, my wife was patient this whole time because it's very draining, the medical business, trying to this doctor's doing this, that doctor's doing that. You got to make appointments here, talk to this person, go there. But finally, got it figured out. And what could have been catastrophic, mm-hmm. Ended up being very mild in comparison.
But you thought you were going to die.
I really did. Looking back, it wasn't as serious as what happened. I mean,
but the fear is real.
Absolutely.
You're it sets you into a place where you're like, I need something. I need help. I need extra
Absolutely.
help.
As a matter of fact, the second time I went to the ER, I had like driven myself into an anxiety frenzy, because the fear of dying for me wasn't for me and where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
Like my faith in God this whole time has never faltered. It's the fact of leaving my wife and kids.
So why does that scare you?
Because knowing the dynamic of not necessarily losing my dad, but losing my dad, I don't want my kids to have to deal with that. Like the same reason why it took me so long to get married, not only waiting for the right person, the Meredith, but I don't want to. I want to do everything I can to raise the best boys I can, and that involves being the best husband I can be.
Yeah.
That involves being faithful to the mother, unlike my father was to my mother. That involves now, after this, understanding I have to take care of myself physically.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't imagine not being there for them.
So let me ask you something. Might be hard. I don't know. But do you think that the best boys you could raise, what if you did die? What do you trust God into raising those best boys? Like is the fear of death, was it like a fear of like they cannot be raised in the best way without, or is it?
No, because no, I know for a fact, like, you know, I know Meredith is such a good mom,
yeah, that
their upbringing would not be in question. Mm-hmm. You know, what that plan is, I don't know, you know, if I wasn't around. But I know that she would absolutely continue to kick ass as a mom, yeah, and take care of them. Mm-hmm. I know that they're surrounded by family, mm-hmm, that loves them. I know you guys are right around the corner. Mm-hmm. I know that you guys would help out any way you can. I know that friends would help out any way they can. So it wasn't a matter of like, I know they would be taken care of. Right. I had good enough life insurance. They get taken care of financially. Sure. They're surrounded by family and friends. Their mom's amazing.
So where's the fear?
The fear is that I'm not there to, it's almost that like control freak kind of thing, you know, like I want to be physically there to help them. And once that happens, and that's a big problem for me, you know, is losing control of that.
So control thing is
absolutely. That's probably one of my big faults. You know, yeah. I probably, if I had to admit on air two things, I hate not having control of things, and I have a hard time with forgiveness. That's Why? For another conversation. I don't know.
This is the conversation.
I don't know, brother. I don't know.
So let's take control. Is it because, I mean, I'm just going to take shots in the dark here,
Absolutely.
Right? Because like, is it the way you grew up? Is that like, was there a loss of control there?
I would have to imagine that had a lot to do with it. You know, my mom and stepdad did the best they could to keep it stable. But even in the best, I don't want to say divorce situation.
Sure.
I mean, even in the best divorce situation, it's not good.
It's still terrible.
It's still terrible for the kids. So, it's terrible for our parties involved. So
partying and stuff like that, was that an act of like, hey, I want to control my own situations now?
I don't know.
Is it escapism?
I think it's escapism. So, I think it's that's what it is.
Yeah. So like, you know, like the Bible says that God's in control.
Yes.
But you want Jess to be in control.
Well, again, that was my time where I fell away. That's exactly it. You have to, and that is something that I have to pray about constantly.
Yeah.
You know, luckily in my job, I do get a little bit of drive time throughout the day, so I get to have some conversations with God.
Hey, that's some really practical advice right there.
Absolutely. I get to enjoy the Matt Chandler sermons while I'm driving around.
Yeah.
I get to follow up with my church. You know, we do Facebook Live. So on the Sundays I don't make it to church, I can follow up on that. I have listened to this podcast while I'm driving.
So you're just keeping like God stuff around.
I have to. And that's where, I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and it was, how do you know? I have a few friends that I have constant conversation with about faith in God.
Sure.
And until you're in it, until you find the right church, until you find the right sermon or podcast to listen to or whatever, it's kind of hard to explain. If you're trying to witness to somebody and they're completely closed-minded and they don't want to hear anything, a sermon or go to a church or whatever, I'm not saying you don't give up on them, but just remember it might be falling on deaf ears. So don't let that discourage you from still witnessing.
Absolutely.
Because I needed that. I have to get to church because I have to feel like I'm in God's house. I have to surround myself. I have to get off of Facebook and get onto sermon videos and getting into the Bible on my phone more so. Like I literally have to catch myself. All right, it's way too much Facebook. Let's go back and find the verse of the day.
It reminds you why God's in control.
Absolutely.
So it's just interesting to me because you could take all your vitamins, you could work out, you diet all you want, eat all the cardboard you want to eat, and try to healthy. But health scares seem to be like the most out of control thing that you could ever take.
Absolutely.
Like there is nothing you can have done to prevent the things for your children's births, right?
Nothing.
There's just zero.
Nothing.
So like it seems
and we tried. Like we did it. I mean, like I said, we went to the classes, Meredith read all the books.
Yeah. All of
prepared
all the information.
I'll tell you as a dad to be, you get advice from everybody known to man, all kinds of advice. Yeah. And none of it matters because when it comes down to situations like that.
Especially with health particularly, there's just no control.
No.
And it's funny because if you self-proclaim like control is something that I struggle with like the most, that God would then test you in this way.
Wait till you're a dad. You realize you realize how little control you absolutely have. Yeah. I mean, you should have learned that being married, first of all. You should have learned you have no control at all because you're married.
For sure. That's funny. So let's go back to this second part. You said forgiveness or unforgiveness.
Yes.
Why is that difficult for you?
That part I truly cannot answer. I just know it's something I struggle with, especially when it comes to like life is not without burdens, even like right now, there's have a lot going on.
Right.
For example, true story. I had a good buddy of mine totaled my car a few months back, and I know I've talked to you about it before. I've talked to pastors at church about it. I know I have to forgive and move on, but it causes strain on my family, not being a single family house, single vehicle family. And it's hard to
not hold that against him.
And when it's more so when it comes to my family, again,
you're very protective.
If you say something about me, you make fun of me, whatever, say what you want, crack jokes. Mm-hmm. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. But when you create hardship for my family, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I'm having issues with my father right now, causing hardships in my family. Mm-hmm. When you cause hardship to my family, I have a really hard time just kind of like letting that go.
Really?
I know I have to, and that's been a big topic of my prayers with God. It's not, for me, it's just not something that comes easy. Again, when I'm talking to my family, for me, I don't care. Talk smack about me today, we'll laugh about it tomorrow. Right. Wrong me by myself today, it's fine. But my family, I guess that's a protective piece that, what, you made things harder for the people I love, the most important people in my life. And I have a real hard time letting that go.
But it seems like your unforgiveness and your self-control, or rather control, is rooted in protecting the family.
Yes.
And so the reason why you have a hard time with those two things is because it threatens the family. How much do you trust God to raise your family and take care of your family?
I mean, wholeheartedly. I mean, I truly do. I know it's hard to say that and believe that and still have issues with forgiveness and control. But I truly believe that's the case. Yeah. I mean, we work hard, my wife, being a teacher is not an easy job.
No.
We work hard to keep our kids growing up in a Christian home or in a Christian school. That's not easy, man. I mean, there's plenty of weeks that we could look at our budget and our finances and say, you know what?
Yeah.
What it costs us to take them there monthly, we can really go toward other bills.
Yeah.
But wholeheartedly believe that's the best place for them.
Yeah.
Port St. Lucie, as boring as people find it, is the best place for them right now. They're in a good school.
Yeah.
I say we kind of belong to two good churches.
Yeah.
We are members at now Family Church, and we have family at Sunlight, literally family at Sunlight.
Yeah. So I think, that's where you you don't want to take advice from me, right? But it seems like that's where you need to. It seems like that's where you need to lean into.
Yes,
God is ultimately taking care of your family, and that might help you.
And that's and when we're talking now, it's easy.
Yeah,
we talk about all the time. It's easy to be thankful and realize how blessed you are.
Yeah,
it's easy right now. We're having a good conversation that my boys go to good school. We have a roof over our heads. There's food on the table. It's easy now.
Yeah.
It's when you're struggling, and wife and I bickering back and forth about who picks up who, where, and go where, and transportation issues, or when you're working out in the field and you're busting your hump, and the paycheck doesn't seem to offset the amount of work you got to put in.
Sure.
It's easy to talk about it now,
but in the grind
of life, that's where
you forget.
It's human. I think it's human nature.
Sure.
I think it's because your primal instincts take over.
Yeah.
Temper takes over. Anger, frustration.
Yeah.
It's easy. Like right now, I could see. Let me call my friend up, tell him I forgive him, but then an hour ago when wife and I trying to figure out who's going to pick up who, where, and drop off where, and ride one car, not so easy then.
Yeah.
Then at that time, you're like,
then you got to return to forgiving.
Yes.
If you can.
I got to say, you know what? Yeah. It could always, listen, even my health scares. I've got friends. I got a friend with brain cancer right now. Even my health scare, as scary as it was, and I thought I was going to die. I've got a friend many, many years battling brain cancer, and thankfully he's doing the best he can to kick butt. There's always somebody worse off financially. At least we have a vehicle.
Yeah.
We have a vehicle that works. It runs, is in good shape. There are people who have to take the bus everywhere.
Yeah.
Or bum rides, or have a broken car in the driveway. Yeah. Some people don't even have a house to the name.
It's why we should be thankful for what we have. Look, we've run up on time, Jess. But if there's anything left to say, the floor is yours. Otherwise, I have one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
We finish off every podcast. But before we do, real quick, if you guys made it to the end, we want to thank you, everyone that's on Facebook, everyone who's listening online or streaming this from your device. Please share this. Please like it and join the community and say what's up to Jess and give him some support. But we've got a mission here, and we're building out a community of awesome testimonies of how God is awesome in our lives. But that leads us to our last question, guys. Jess, why do you think God is awesome?
Like I said earlier, I think he is awesome because he is all about second, third, fourth, some of us fifth or sixth chances.
Yeah.
Prodigal